You know that feeling when you check your savings account and the number just sits there, mocking you. You've been trying. You've been careful. You skipped the nice dinners. You said no to the weekend trip. You did everything you were supposed to do. And yet somehow the number barely moved. Or it moved and then life happened. And now it's back where it started. And you're left wondering if maybe you're just not the kind of person who gets ahead financially. Here's what I want to tell you. It's not about willpower. It's not about income. It's not even really about how much you're saving each month. There is a specific rule, one number, that completely changes the mechanics of how money works for you. And once you understand it, you will never look at your savings the same way again. That rule is the $1,000 rule, and it has almost nothing to do with $1,000. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to effortlessly cross into wealth-building territory, while others stay stuck in the same loop for years. If you want to understand the real mechanics behind why some people's money works for them and other people's money just disappears, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up changing how you think about your finances. Now, before we get into the rule itself, I need to destroy a belief that is quietly keeping millions of people financially stuck. And that belief is this: that building wealth is primarily an income problem. Most people think the reason they're not getting ahead is because they don't make enough money. If they just got the raise, landed the better job, picked up the side hustle, then everything would finally click into place. And look, I'm not going to tell you income doesn't matter. Of course it matters. But here's what the research actually shows. Studies on household finances consistently find that income level has surprisingly little correlation with actual wealth accumulation once you control for basic cost of living. There are people earning $45,000 a year quietly building real financial security. And there are people earning $150,000 a year who are completely broke and one missed paycheck away from crisis. The difference isn't the number on their paycheck, it's something else entirely. And that something else is exactly what the $1,000 rule is about. So what is it? The $1,000 rule is this: the single most important financial move you can make is to get $1,000 into savings and then treat that number as an absolute floor you never go below. Not a goal, not a one-time achievement, a permanent floor. Money comes in, money goes out, but that $1,000 never moves. It just sits there. And that's where things get interesting. Because what sounds like a simple savings tip is actually a complete rewiring of how your brain processes every financial decision you make from that point forward. Here's why the floor matters more than the number. When most people think about saving money, they think about accumulation. Stack money up, watch the number grow, feel good, and that's fine. But what the $1,000 floor does is something different. It shifts you from a scarcity mindset to what psychologists call a sufficiency mindset. And that shift changes everything about how you make decisions. Think about what your brain is doing right now when you're living without that floor. Every unexpected expense is a crisis. Your car needs a repair, your laptop dies, you get hit with a medical bill. Each of these things doesn't just cost money, it costs you mental bandwidth, sleep, and decision-making capacity. When you're in that mode, your brain is running on what researchers call a cognitive scarcity tax. You're spending mental energy managing financial anxiety instead of making good financial decisions. There's a landmark study out of Harvard and Princeton that measured the cognitive impact of financial stress. What they found was stunning. People experiencing financial scarcity showed a reduction in cognitive capacity equivalent to losing 13 IQ points. That's not a small effect. That's the difference between being sharp and being foggy. And it happens not because these people are less intelligent, but because their mental resources are consumed by the constant low-level hum of financial uncertainty. The $1,000 floor doesn't eliminate financial stress, but it crosses a threshold where your brain stops being in full crisis mode for most of the small financial surprises that life throws at you. And that threshold crossing has an outsized effect compared to what you'd expect from $1,000, which is honestly not that much money in the grand scheme of things. This is where the math starts to get really interesting. Let's say you have zero in savings right now and you're putting away $200 a month. Getting to that first $1,000 takes you 5 months. 5 months of discipline, 5 months of saying no to things, 5 months of watching a number slowly tick upward while it still feels like it doesn't matter. And here's the brutal truth. For most of those 5 months, it genuinely doesn't feel like anything is changing. Because financially, not that much has changed yet, but something shifts at $1,000. And it's not what you think. The shift isn't that you now have $1,000. The shift is that you've proven something to yourself. You've demonstrated, with actual evidence, that you are the kind of person who can accumulate money instead of spending every dollar that comes in. That identity shift is enormous. Because from that point forward, every financial decision you make is being made by someone who has already proven they can save. And that person makes different choices than someone who is still trying to prove it. Here's the behavioral economics behind why this works. Humans are deeply identity-driven in their decision-making. When your behavior is consistent with how you see yourself, it's easy. When it conflicts with how you see yourself, it's exhausting and unsustainable. Most people who struggle financially don't see themselves as savers. They see themselves as people who are trying to save. That's a completely different identity with completely different behavioral defaults. The $1,000 floor flips that switch. Now you're not trying to save. You are someone who has savings. And people who have savings make saving consistent decisions without it requiring willpower every single time. The behavior becomes automatic because it's consistent with identity. This is why the floor, the untouchable nature of it, matters so much more than the amount. But here's where most people completely blow this. They hit $1,000, they feel great. And then something comes up, a trip, a sale, a justification, and they dip into it. And the moment they do, they've broken the floor. They're back to being someone who is trying to save instead of someone who saves. And psychologically, they've just proven the opposite of what they needed to prove to themselves. The $1,000 has to be untouchable, not sort of untouchable. Not touchable in emergencies that you define loosely.